Hi, and welcome back to our podcast, Abilene People, here on bigcountryhomepage.com, where we talk to Abilene's most interesting people. And sometimes we talk to people in Abilene who do the most interesting jobs or most difficult jobs. And I think today's guest qualifies for all of that and more. Lee Ann Millender, Executive Director of Big Country CASA. How are you?
I am fine. How are you, Danny?
I'm good. So we're going to get to CASA and what it is and why I think that it's one of the most difficult jobs and spaces, what you're doing. But first, let's learn about Lee Ann. Where are you from and how did you get to Abilene?
I am from East Texas. And how did I get to Abilene?
Oh, wait, no, hold on. East Texas. You can't just say East Texas. That's a big swath of territory. All right, let me ask you, are we talking about Longview, Tyler? We talking about that swampy, boggy lake over there? We talking about Texarkana? What are we talking about?
We are talking about Opelika, Texas, which is Kickapoo Creek.
Opelika.
Is
I love it.
Yes.
That's specific enough. Yeah.
Yes. Kickapoo Bottom.
Yeah. And you were born and raised there?
Yes. Which is just outside of Brownsboro. So at least you have a zip code when I say Brownsboro.
So, how do you say it again? Opelika?
Yes.
So remember there's a Bible verse about Jesus talking about he's from Nazareth and nothing good can come from Nazareth.
Right.
Whatever good came from Opelika? Well, Lee Ann Millender.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know. It's probably the best community in America.
Probably.
Yeah. So I am making fun of it.
Population 50?
50 maybe?
Maybe. I mean, it's a big area, so there's not 50 people in a row.
We had the mayor in here last week, and he's from Guthrie, Texas. Yeah.
Wow.
Is that right, Guthrie? Gustine? I always get them mixed up. Gustine? Which is the one up at the 6666 Ranch? That's not him. That's Guthrie.
I think
he's from Gustine.
Oh.
Little bitty place.
Wow.
And you're from a littler bittier place.
That's right. I made it out.
Well, there's probably a bunch of people that say, man, that sounds good. I'd have to go back.
That's right.
Yeah. So you're in Abilene. You have worked for CPS.
Yes, 8 years.
Oh, 8 years. So tell me about 8 years at CPS. How'd you do that?
It was a different day and time. I started to work for CPS in 1990, and I joke about that being the late 1900s, but it was. It's such a different time than what it is now. Yeah. So I was there at CPS for 8 years in the CASA program in Athens, Texas, recruited me to come over and be the executive director. Stayed there 18 years. Texas CASA recruited me to work for them for 4 years. And then Abilene recruited me to come here. I've been here just over 5 years.
And CASA is an acronym, CASA.
Court Appointed Special Advocates. And
what is a CASA?
A CASA, we recruit volunteers to advocate for children in the foster care system. Our volunteers serve as what's called guardian ad litem to the courts. What's important about that is in the system of foster care, you have the court, right, the judges. You have the state of Texas or our local district attorney's office that represents CPS in filing the cases, and they represent the state's interest in keeping children safe, free of abuse or neglect. And then you have parents' attorneys that protect the parents' rights and advocate for what the parents want. You have attorney ad litems who represent children and what are their legal rights. A CASA comes in and is the voice of the child in court representing best interest.
So how do you define best interest?
Well, it's pretty much always in the eye of the beholder, but to keep it simple, what would you want for your child?
And I think that anybody watching this podcast or listening to it all of a sudden realizes why it is I said you've got one of the most difficult jobs. So what you just described has to be incredibly challenging, so many levels. Just the logistics, the emotional logistics of all of this. I mean, how do you do it? You're going into court almost always in a bad, sad situation, no?
In difficult situations, absolutely. And it is a hard job for me. You know, our budget for Big Country CASA is just over $1 million. But the job is really difficult for those who volunteer, who aren't paid to do the job that we need them to do to advocate for children in the foster care system.
And if I could wave a magic wand and give you anything right now, you'd probably say, please give me more volunteers.
Please give me more volunteers so we can serve more children.
And you and I have talked previously about this, and feel free to say, I know, I think you're just kind of, hunting down the wrong path. But it seems to me our culture and the negativity that persists in our culture, political culture, entertainment culture, conversations, social media, oh my word, all of that combines for a climate of super hyper critic, negative kind of behavior. Has to complicate your job and has to also challenge people to want to volunteer.
The simplicity of it is when it gets hard on people, it's even harder on children. So when you list out those things that you're talking about, that you see that go on in our world that may turn your stomach or make you angry or just want to shut the phone off, the TV off, the radio off, it's even harder for children. We as adults can cope much better than children who haven't had the education experience or, the lived experiences that we have. It's harder. It's harder for kids.
You got to see, and I know confidentiality is what it is, and you're not going to talk about specifics, but you've got to see some really tough situations on a regular basis. How do you cope with that?
For me, I'm a layer back being the executive director, but something that happened more recently is one of our volunteers visited a child at a facility here in Abilene, and I'm going to call the little girl's name Jenny. When her volunteer went there to meet with Jenny was really tired. She said, I stayed up all night long waiting for the tooth fairy. I didn't go to bed till 2 or 3 o'clock. So our volunteer gave her $1 so that she could have $1. These kids are just like our kids, Danny. They want the same things our kids want.
Let's talk about Jenny for a second. What kind of situation had you come from? A single parent or abusive parent? Or
Mom and dad, family intact, substance abuse. Something that's important to remember is that our parents today were yesterday's children. So when we talk about families, we have adults that are parenting children just like we did that didn't come from the best environments, but they may be doing the best they can. Some of them lean more towards using substances, drugs, alcohol, to help them cope with their childhood as well as the day-to-day stresses. And that all just piles up on our children.
So when CASA meets the child has already been introduced to our court system. Is that pretty much accurate?
Yes. When CPS goes out and does a removal and determines that they need to legally remove the child from the home, they file a petition with the court asking the court to give them temporary custody, which is actually kind of holding the parents' rights until the court can make a decision as to whether or not the child should return home, the parents' rights be fully instated, or maybe altered in some way.
So take me through that then from the child's perspective. So the child's removed from home, and then at some point, I would assume fairly quickly, that child's going to go to court.
Sometimes, but not always. It really depends on the age of the child. So our judges are simply incredible. They may be asked to visit with the child in chambers, which they can. Oftentimes the CASA or the attorney ad litem for the child is present. So yes, that can happen. It's not always an instance where the child is sitting there in court listening to the state prove up their case and explain to the court why their parents shouldn't have their parental rights.
Well, that's a good thing. The child doesn't have to hear that, right?
It absolutely is. That would be reliving the trauma all over for everyone to see and hear.
So I'm just going through in my mind scenarios that I'm sure that aren't even as bad as what you guys see and deal with kids that have had to be removed from home. Where does all this go, and what's the hope? Do you have, from your perspective, do you think in terms of the glass being more half empty or half full? You have hope. You have, hey, this thing that we know of as our culture at large with at-risk kids and people living in ways that a child would be removed from home. You have hope about all that?
I do. And my hope lies with the volunteers because the volunteers come in and they give their perspective to the court, not any parent's rights or what the state wants or what the child's legal rights are, but what's in the best interest. And that really helps the courts formulate what needs to happen in a case. So to me, Danny, the hope is in having a CASA on a case. Right now in Big Country CASA, where we only serve Taylor County, we're serving about half of the kids in foster care. So that's about half of the kids who need their own voice in court for their best interests not being served.
So volunteers would help breach that gap.
And give hope.
And if somebody thinks, well, I'm not qualified to volunteer, I would assume there's training involved.
Yes, sir, there is. Volunteers have to be at least 21 years of age or older, complete a background history check, 30 hours of training, as well as 5 hours of courtroom observation before they're sworn in as officers of the court by our judges.
And so when you talk about needing more volunteers, and you talk about the number of kids that would benefit, what's the secret sauce to get you more volunteers? I'm one thing would be just personal appeal.
Right. That's our best recruitment tool is word of mouth.
How do you navigate? You're facing the holidays and all. If somebody watches this and says, I want to volunteer, and they call Big Country CASA and say, hey, I want to volunteer, how long would it take until you've got them boots on the ground and they're actually helping? Is it a matter of 3 or 4 months?
Yes, we'll say 3 months. We have to do all the vetting that's involved, which, also includes the fingerprints, the Child Protective Services background check. Those things take a little time because we're depending on other systems. Okay.
And you can't just, you've got to figure out, is this person a good fit?
Absolutely. And that's part of training. During training, the 30 hours of training, 15 hours online, 15 hours in the classroom at our office there at 400 Oak Street in the Plaza building. It's a way not only to offer the training for what they need to know educationally and how the system works, but it's also a tool that we use to vet people in or out, help them determine or decide, maybe I wouldn't want to work with children that have experienced this type of abuse. Maybe I don't want to work with this age of child. Maybe I want older teens. There are so many different ways that we can match volunteers with children's cases.
Yeah, and when that happens and it's a match, does somebody as a CASA work with multiple matches or just one child to see that child through the system?
They work with one case. Now, if there's one child in the case, that's grand, but there could be 5 children in the case.
Okay.
But it's still one volunteer per case.
Gotcha. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about what's causing the difference. You said earlier, the late 1900s.
Yes.
Things have changed, and that's how you referred to the 1990s. So much has changed in 25 years. Why are we seeing such change? And is it fair to characterize it as, corrosion of the nuclear family or healthy moms and dads? I mean, what's going on?
I would attribute a lot of it to the deterioration of the family where mom and dad aren't both present. That's honestly the number one risk factor for a child to become abused or neglected is the absence of a parent from the home. So when that occurs, it puts the child at risk. You're dealing with half the parents that a normal nuclear family would have. But that doesn't mean that those homes aren't healthy and supportive and
That's right where I
nurturing.
was headed, because we see
Lots of single moms and dads.
and we see families that are, I hate to put it this way, church going families,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden you hear that, the guy was a volunteer, even in the children's work at church, and turns out that he was doing some really terrible things with kids. So
happens.
it happens. And so you just, well, I don't know what, I don't know. Is it okay to put it this way? What the hell's going on in our world?
Well, the number one thing that we see that is common in most of the families who experience the foster care system is substance use or abuse. Whether it's illegal drugs, alcohol, whatever might be going on. In the 90s, marijuana was the bad drug, with an occasional cocaine, maybe a heroin case once a year. Today, we're dealing with methamphetamine. Fentanyl is so much on the increase that parents are going to those types of coping things instead of maybe counseling or therapy to deal with their childhood trauma. That's what I see.
And right now in our culture at large, there's an ongoing conversation about Jeffrey Epstein and all that he did with kids and all. One thing that I think we've got to guard against is normalizing abuse and then excusing it, enabling it by just turning the other way.
It's tragic. That is
it's
a
horrible.
social tragedy for us as a society and for the children in our society.
And to me, it's not political. I tell friends all the time, it's ethical. It's thinking about outcomes. What kind of outcomes do you expect when you see a kid who's been caught up in this horrible situation? The court's taken them away from their mom or dad or home life and placed them with, you guys, so to speak, with a foster agency. What kind of outcome do you hope for that child?
The first thing is that the child be safe and that we start on a pathway of healing and recovery, getting them to the position where they can look forward and not just at the back of what happened to them. It's giving them hope that things will get better. It's really tough on kids being in foster care, especially in today's world. When I said CPS has changed, the legislature has created what was called foster care redesign. And right now here in Region 2, which extends really from Brownwood up to Wichita Falls, we're in community-based care where the state of Texas only does investigations and removal. They no longer handle the actual placement of the child in foster care, treatment centers, adoption homes.
Who handles that?
To Engage is our contractor here.
Wonderful folks over there. I've met them, talked to them.
Great. They love kids.
Good people.
Love kids.
And so they're doing the placing. And then y'all's role will be to advocate in court on behalf of the child.
Right. We visit the child wherever that child or children may be placed. Right now, with the foster care redesign and community-based care, To Engage has struggled in recruiting foster homes here in Region 2 so that we can keep our children in their community. Many of our children, like 60%, are placed outside of our region.
Wow. And is that just because people aren't equipped or they don't desire to be foster families?
The CPS system is just upside down right now, and it's taking a while for communities to respond to say, no, not for our children. We want to keep our children home, which was the premise of community-based care, in that children would be kept within 50 miles of their home and community. Because if you think about it, it is absolutely traumatic to go through any instance of child abuse or neglect. But when a child is removed from that home and then placed in the system, that's another layer of trauma on that child. And then you think about it, being a 6-year-old little boy, young man, and you're placed on the other side of Houston, which puts another burden even on the CASAs going to visit, but also to engage in being able to supervise the child, make sure that there's therapists lined up, counseling. How safe is the foster home if you're only visiting it once every 3 months, once every 6 months? There's a lot of unanswered questions when our children aren't kept home.
Well, there is so much that you're unpacking in this conversation, Lee Ann. I'm just sitting here wondering if, has government failed us? Is it a matter of our personal? It's just a lack of personal accountability and personal responsibility and people making good choices. I mean, I realize if somebody has addictive behavior and they have access to drugs, that's a bad combination.
It is.
And that's a bad home life environment for kids.
Yes.
And the child should be removed from that, and often are, evidently.
Yes.
And I know anybody that's gone through recovery or anybody that's had a loved one go through recovery knows. Just saying, the old Nancy Reagan line, just say no. Well, that's a clever, 3 words, but it's a lot more than that.
Yeah, right. It was a lot of red ribbons, right? A lot of red ribbons. But I think it also goes to the point to say where the family makes the decision to keep their children close. And that is one of the things that we really push as CASA. We have a program, it's called Collaborative Family Engagement, or CFE. We love acronyms, okay?
Yeah, CASA, CFE.
You got it. CPS. The list is very long. The book is really thick.
You came up with Notorious BIG. That was you. All the acronyms. Sure, you invented them all.
Sure. Yeah. But it goes back, like we were talking even before the podcast. It's a individual's decision. We can't control what others choose, and that's oftentimes what children succumb to, or parents, or choices of their parents. But if we can keep children close and placed with family members, or maybe someone that's not biologically related, but the child calls her Aunt Sue, keep the children close. That will help them stay connected to their family and their community. So it's not just being a foster parent. It's being someone that would just step in the gap for that child, alongside our volunteers who are really, with our program, trying to cultivate that child's history, that child's network, to build it up into collaborative, supportive entities that will see children through their darkest hours.
You talked about you have hope because of volunteers. So as we draw the conversation to conclusion, give us your best elevator pitch for somebody who might be tugged to become a volunteer. What do you tell them?
Be the hope for a child. Be the one that wants to be a difference. The change agent that steps in the gap for these kids, to be there, to know the child, to be consistent, to go and visit that child wherever they may be. Make that commitment to another human being. To answer one of your other questions earlier, during your rapid fire questions, right? We need to band together as a community to say, no, not for our children. It extends beyond just my child, but these are our community's children. And I promise you, having done this for 35 years, children go back to their home community. And for the Big Country CASA kids here in Taylor County, that's Abilene. That's us here. And there's so many things that we can do as a community to be there for the kids. Kids come in, some may be prenatally exposed to drugs. Others may be teenagers that have complex needs that maybe their family can't meet their needs. Large variety and kind of continuum from smallest to the oldest. There are ways that we can meet the child where they are, anywhere on their journey, to help make it just a little bit better for them, to give them hope that, yes, they're in foster care, but they're not always going to be this age or that age. They can look for the future and have hope and be their own change agent for how they think about things and put it into perspective.
Wow. You know, I said earlier, if you could wave a magic wand, I guess you'd want more volunteers, and you said yes.
Yes, I would. But then also, too, I want to be sure and reassure anyone who is even contemplating in the slightest of becoming a CASA volunteer. We've got staff that are incredible, that support them through the way. They never go to court alone. If there's a meeting, they're never alone. Well, there's always someone that will be there with them, supporting and guiding them in knowing what really is the best interest of the child. The training covers best interest and how we use what's called the Holly factors to make that determination. They're never alone. As a volunteer, we are always there to support them and help them be the best volunteer they can be for that child or sibling group.
And as difficult as a volunteer's task might be, it pales in comparison to the difficulties that the child they serve or the children they serve have faced.
Absolutely. I mean, could you imagine being a 2-year-old removed from home and placed in a shelter in Houston? How do you process that? That's happened for one of our kids here in Taylor County. Breaks my heart. Surely if people knew the need, there would be a greater response. But it is hard work. But you're never alone. It is hard to see what children and families go through. And sometimes it's not possible to keep the family with keep the child with their biological family. But maybe the next layer with a relative or someone that we call fictive kin. Or if not there, maybe there is a foster home who is not closed off to maintaining somewhat of a relationship for that child to have the best of both worlds. And then oftentimes when children are adopted, there can be, if the adopted family chooses, ongoing contact. I've seen it here in Abilene, just a picture-perfect story of parents who fell to substance abuse. Their 2 little kids were removed. The foster parents were phenomenal and are still engaged 7 years later in those children's lives. The CASA volunteer, still engaged. The mom actually calls the CASA volunteer for her children her advocate because she helps guide her in making her own adult decisions.
Well, we're all of a sudden talking about, saving lives,
Yeah, making positive changes. We were talking earlier, be a solution. There's so much ill in our world. We need to come to the table as individuals with solutions, knowing our own limits and capacities, bringing in our different perspectives and views so that we could do the absolute best for children and their families.
So how do people find your website?
Yes, there's actually 2 different ones, bigcountrycasa.org, or it's simple to remember, becomeacasa.org.
So in post-production, Travis will put those on the screen.
Perfect.
So those will be right down here, somewhere right down here. Do this, Lee Ann. So if you can, yeah, there, right down there. So people can navigate to the web, figure out how they could engage and be involved.
Yes.
That's a good start.
Yes. That's the easiest start. But if you don't have access to the internet, come by our office. It's in the Plaza building, like maybe where you're voting today on the 2nd floor. Just come
today's
down.
voting day.
It is. Come down the hallway to the right. Knock on the door, ring the doorbell. Right now it's a turkey gobbling. Last week it was a wolf howling.
Oh,
But come by.
you guys got fancy doorbells there at CASA.
Yes,
Yeah, all right.
well,
All right.
not real fancy, no.
All right. I want to ask you one just kind of ending question. Just go anywhere. It doesn't have to be CASA related, kid related, anything. It's just anything at all. How long have you lived in Abilene?
Just over 5 years.
So if you're in Abilene another 10 or 20 years, what changes would you like to see in our city? Now, before you answer, I want to tell you that I would personally like to see, another couple of my favorite restaurants. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see people learn how to drive their cars a little more effectively and efficiently. I'd like to see that, and I'd like to see less potholes. On the way to my restaurants, as I'm waving at the other cordial drivers.
Yes.
But silliness aside, what would you like to see?
Honestly, I'd like to see our community truly come together with solutions for whatever societal ill there may be, but to come together with solutions. There's so much negativity, and my husband says all the time, it's a me world. Can we just break it down a little bit? It's not a me world. It may seem like that, but none of us can live alone.
Yeah, it's an us world.
It's an us world, and we need to focus more on us and the greater whole, especially where children who do not have any control live.
Well, there you have it, folks. Lee Ann Millender from Opelika. Yeah, I knew I was saying it wrong. Opelika. I wish I'd remembered it. Obviously, somebody that's put a lot of her career and time and energy and thought and passion and all that you're doing, man. Keep it up. I
Thank you.
I don't know what we do. Your fun run every spring is superhero themed.
Yes, it's the first Saturday in May.
I think we see why it's superhero themed.
Yes, it is, because these are superheroes.
Yeah.
They are putting on the cape for kids
Yeah.
that can't put the cape on themselves.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
We really do appreciate it. I know
Thank
that
you.
you've appreciated watching and listening, and I don't know, maybe we'll see a tick up in volunteers. That'd be a good thing.
Wonderful.
Because there really are no magic wands. It's just people choosing to, as you say, come together and step out of the me world into the us world.
And be the difference.
Kids.
Yeah, be the difference.
Yeah. So be the difference. Thank you for watching this episode of Abilene People. Big shout out to our ace producer, Travis Corrigan, who always makes it work over there at the switcher board. We call him TC, but he's really TCB, taking care of business for us every time we do one of these podcasts. Really appreciate him, and appreciate our guest today, Lee Ann Millender, the executive director of Big Country CASA. And you saw those website addresses. Travis had those on the screen. Go there, find out more about what it takes to be a volunteer. And we will see you next time here on BigCountryHomepage.com on Abilene People. I'm your host, Danny Sims. Thanks for being with us.